everyone, welcome to Day to Day Knit episode, I think 29, the 29th episode, I don't know, we'll see when I am editing. Today I have one FO to talk about and two whips and a thing that I will have to probably put on my needles again. But you can see things are starting to look a little bit more put together here. I have some wall art that I will show you at the end, including my first sock ever that I don't wear anymore because it required so much mending that it was not comfortable to wear anymore because I wore it too many times. And I should have had like 2 or 4 more stitches when I cast on, so which is probably one of the reasons why it needed so much mending, because it has been stretched out on my foot. And just got home from the gym, so we'll see if he realizes that I'm filming or not. And I'm going to move this light that's pointed right at my eyes, and the reflection is bothering me. Okay, so first of all, what am I wearing? I am wearing a Rola-Brava sweater. Rola-Brava is the name for a turtle dove, and this I completely made up. If you want to see what I have to say about it, it's all, I think, on the 4th episode, filmed in April. And I made up my own sweater basically, because there was nothing like this on Ravelry at that time that didn't have a v-neck, or I don't know, there was just nothing like it at that point. So this in the center is Malabrigo. I think the color is Jupiter, but I can't quite remember. I cannot remember. I think this one might be Camellia, the color, I mean, excuse me, colorway. And it is my favorite mohair ever. It is made right here in Nashville, and it has silk. First, it's very, very soft, and it has silk, but it shows differently than other mohairs. It has more of a sheen to it, which is what I really like. It just makes it look like, I don't know, richer. Alright, so after being interrupted for like 2 minutes, I am back. And I don't know, grab your coffee, tea, wine, beer, cocktail, and do join me for, I don't know, maybe 20-30 more minutes. Okay. So I think I've said all I had to say about the sweater, but here you might notice something. That's a brooch. It's you know, I'm just using it decoratively here, but you can use it on shawls and such. It's actually a very big pin that goes from here to here, and it has this because knitting the Portuguese way, your yarn is either on a pin and on your chest or going around your neck, and it has different spots here where you can put your yarn, so you can actually use this to do color work or just plain Portuguese knitting. And the designer is called Inês Costa, and I will put the link for her page on the notes. But I guess now I get to move on. And this is my FO. This is the Jupiter crop, and it's a t-shirt top originally. And for most of my notes on this will be on the last episode, so I'm not going to go over it all over again. Just head over there if you'd like to know more about this. So here we are. Oops. And this is extremely comfortable. I really enjoyed using the yarn. It is Vovó, which is a Retrosaria Vovó yarn. It is the original yarn of the project. And because my stitches are longer than what most patterns require, sometimes I have to do modifications, and that's really why most of my modifications happen. It was just because of that. And the pattern, it's supposed to end like more or less between mid-arm and the elbow. You're supposed to finish your sleeve, your collar work, and your ribbing. But my collar work is finishing right at the elbow, and then I would need to do my ribbing. So I decided either I would do a 3/4 sleeve or I would go full sleeve, which I did. I ended up making them a little bit bigger, but that just means I get to have them go a little bit longer, closer to my fingers, warm me up. And when I did the Portuguese episode, I was a bit hot with a sweater, but now I was cold without it. So I think I might stay with it on. But anyway, I really like the design. After blocking the tightness that I felt here. Oh, and one of you is like some sort of a genius and was like, Sarah, why don't you do a gusset under the arm? Because you know how you usually have like one hole that you have to like stitches together, or two little holes that you tie up together. Well, I had a huge hole, and if I stitched it together, I would have ended up with a very, very tight arm. So that person told me, Sarah, why don't you just do a gusset? And I did. I did like, I think this is more or less like 4x6 gusset here. Oops, I have to pull this one back in. But basically I stitched under the arm, and it's not really noticeable. I don't notice it wearing it. Gosh, this is so cozy. I love wool. I love wool. I've been so excited to go back to knitting wool. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love wearing knitted t-shirts. They're so much cooler when they're made of like cotton. So much cooler than, you know, t-shirts that we usually wear that are like fast fashion. Probably because they're more natural or use less plastic and such in them. So I really love wearing those, but what I really like wearing and knitting the most is wool. All things wool. And I have this like right against my skin, and it doesn't bother me. Also, if you're like the free the nipple movement, you can always wear such a sweater without the bra on, and it's not uncomfortable, presuming that you already do that with other like shirts and t-shirts and things. Yes. And I think I don't have much more to add to this. I added a little pattern in white here, using the same pattern that's inside these pink shapes. I don't know what to call them. They're like diamond-ish shapes. And I had lots of yarn left after finishing this and adding the yarn to do squares on my blanket. And what did I have? I had... I'm so stupid. I'm gonna pick up my blanket. This is the Coziest memory blanket. And I guess I did not realize when I was working on the blanket, but I thought I did not have enough red yarn to do a whole square, so then I had to start with the white here. But I have a whole other unused skein right here. One whole used red skein, so I could have had this like as a proper square. Poop. But anyway, I finished this one, and I guess I have a whole new one for something else now. But I have this is my white square, my like brownish square, and my pink square, and the blue is here. And I still have this much left. I don't have much blue, but I have quite a few of the others, plus that red skein. So I don't know what I'll do with them. I don't know if I'll do another color work project in the future. Goodness, I really like this yarn. I really like this yarn. I would definitely use this yarn again. But I don't think I have more Vovó like for a different project. I think I'd actually have to buy more to use it again. But this takes me to the, what is it called? What is this called? The Coziest Memory blanket. Blanket is not in the title of the pattern. And the pattern is free. Basically, it's just squares that you do. You start with one square, and then all squares after that, you are picking up stitches from previous squares. And what I had was, I had one huge blanket. And I had ashes of, when I was adding those squares to it, from the sweater, I asked Joseph, because I thought this is kind of long, like I wonder how long this is. I asked Joseph to pick up one end while I was knitting on the other end, and to just start walking. So he grabs it and he walks very slowly, because you know I'm knitting and he doesn't want to ruin anything, and it's kind of frail-ish because it's only two rows of squares. Starts walking, and it turns out that it's the size of my in-laws' den, so like the living room. It's huge. It's the size of a room. It's huge. It's bigger than a king-size bed with a draping on both sides. It's huge. So then I decided I'm going to cut this in half. So what I did was I had, let's see an example. Okay. See this here? You have stitches going this direction, and then they go in this direction here. So here I cut halfway through the row, and with a needle, I caught these, the red yarn, but obviously it was not this example here. I'm giving you an example. I caught this square that was right above it, because those stitches would be live stitches, because No, the white was the one that would end up with live stitches. So I caught those, and I finished those, and I have a good example of that that's noticeable. Now I'm starting to get hot. On this end, where I used this gray yarn to finish a beige square, so it is noticeable. And then on the other end, I still had this yarn, so I was able to finish this square. And where I had 2 rows of squares and I cut them in half, I was able to put 2 rows of squares side by side. So now I have 4 rows. So now I have 4 rows instead of 2 rows, and this is actually quite tall. Let's see how much it is. If I grab one end and the other end is touching the floor, so if I have one end touching the floor and it's draped over my shoulder, the other end is here. So it is actually a good size for a blanket. Not just a lap blanket, but an actual, blanket that you can cover yourself if you're laying in bed or on the sofa. And so there we are. I added those colors and I added other colors that I had missing. So now I am almost fully up to date. I think I'm missing this yarn here. So I might do that after this video is done. And in the meantime, I also started this sweater that's called Right Direction, but I'm turning it into a cardigan. I'm not going to talk about all the mods I'm going to do to this, but I can tell you that I cast on differently. I did not start with the ribbing at the neck. I have live stitches on the needle to then figure out how I want to finish it, if I want to bring it up more, or most likely I'll just do a bind off that's tight, because it's a sweater that has like a wide neck. And I'm also turning it into a jacket, which means that I will be doing some steeking since I'm doing it in the round. Now, on these squares, you might have noticed that some squares are much bigger than others. And that is not only because I'm going from lace to worsted weight, but mostly, and also the different types of yarn, they grow in different ways as you manipulate the blanket, which is, you know, a fun thing to see. It's not all the same, but mostly it's my tension. I crocheted before I started knitting, but I'd always like have pain up and down like this area and into my fingers, and I would actually got my fingers stuck in this position a few times because I had just so much tension in them. And when I first started knitting, I always used needles that were slightly bigger than what the pattern called for, or I used the pattern's needles. But I started having a lot of pain on my hands and arms then. So what I eventually decided to do was learn to relax my hand. So now I'm knitting and this hand is not doing anything except this finger is moving sometimes. And I have my wrist in a neutral position, so my hand is always like this. This hand is the one that does the work. But this also meant that my gauge is now completely different. So my most recent squares tend to be a whole lot looser than my older squares on the blanket, because it has been practically 2 years since I started the blanket. And that means that for the Jupiter, is that what it's called? No, Right Direction. Jupiter crop is the one I'm wearing. That means that for the Right Direction, I had to use needles that are 6 sizes smaller than the ones called in the pattern. And also, I'm having to hold my yarn differently to not go even smaller. So usually I would just do this shape again, but like very lightly, just to keep a hold on the yarn, and grab my project, and I would just use this needle to pick up stitches. But now, to get better gauge and not go even smaller on these needles, what I'm doing is, and this is a suggestion of my friend Jody, I'm going like putting the yarn over my wrist like that, and then doing one loop and then catching it like this to get a better grip. So my hand is still very loose. I'm not like holding the yarn at all, and the tension is all happening here. The tensioning, I guess. And I get to just knit like this without really putting a lot of work on this hand. So far it's working mostly. There was one row where I got really relaxed, and you can tell looking at my fabric. But all other rows are very consistent so far. We'll see how it looks when it's done, and then how it looks once it's blocked. And that's all I have to say about that project. Now, if you might remember that I worked on my dad's vest. The project is called His Vest, but the smallest size was too big for my dad, so I had to do a lot of changes for the pattern. And the first time I did a vest, which I ruined by putting in the dryer and shrinking it and felting it completely, and it's just, you can't even see where the ribbing is. I wonder what he did to that. It would do good coasters, because now you can cut into it and there's no issue. But it's using this yarns, which is Knit Picks, Tweed, City Tweed DK. The other one is Gloss DK, also from Knit Picks. Gloss is 70% merino, 30% silk. But anyway, it's using this, and this has a little bit of alpaca in it. So the first one that I did grew a lot in the space of 1 week. Like, he opened it on Christmas Day, and then he wore it for about a week, and it just kept getting longer and longer every day. So I made one, the second one that I made it a little bit shorter, so like 2 inches shorter, so it would just like grow by itself, grow when blocked. Then I would wear it some, or I would leave it hanging to see if it would grow and then stop growing. And I did that. I've worn it a little bit, not a lot, because it is summer. I wore it on the airport on the way here, and then just like, I don't know, a handful of times. And I've had it hanging on a hanger in the closet this whole time, and it has not grown at all. So I might have to rip out the ribbing, and with this, and maybe going into another skein there, I will have to add 2 more inches with ribbing. But it's okay, because of, instead of doing it bottom up all the way, I was smart enough to remember to do this bottom up, just to follow the pattern, because that's how it's written. And then from here to like further down, I did that top down. So now I just have to rip my bind off, pull it, just, excuse me, pull the whole ribbing out, knit all of that, and then add ribbing. And it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. And now I might show you at the end of this a little bit more about just my space here. But you might remember my friend Jane Olsen. She showed up on episode 3, which was filmed in March. And I have here 2 pieces of artwork by her. One has 2 birds, and another one is my wedding bouquet in watercolors. She's a very talented artist, and I think maybe if I can remember, I'll leave the link to her Instagram page. So if you're ever curious, or you're from around this area, you might want to like check out her art exhibits. But anyway, this here you can buy in Retrosaria Vovó. It is a map of Portugal with the different sheep that are from Portugal. And I live right here. Well, not live right now, obviously, but that's where I'm from. This tip right here. And these 3 sheep here are the sheep that are the closest to my region. And they are Mondegueira, and Serra da Estrela, and Serra da Estrela Preta. And they're very pretty. And there we are. Ovelhas, I don't know if you can read this from over there, but Ovelhas Portuguesas means Portuguese sheep. And I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say, and I think we've done good time. And now I'm going to add one more square of this while I knit, and then I'll have to make dinner, which will be curry. And then we'll see. I have something arriving to help me like keep this organized, because these cubbies are super deep, so my yarn keeps like falling. So I have a new way of organizing it, and we'll see if it works once some pieces that I need arrive. All right, and I think that is all. I think I covered everything I needed to cover. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I guess I will see you in 2 weeks, or you will see me in 2 weeks. Bye bye.